There's an invoice for you. Lynn Ann's on her way. Look at it. I believe we are on the critical list now. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Craig confirmed that. Yeah.
First we had geese. First we had the
Brown out, then we had a goose drop in there. Yeah.
water main for us. They went in and caused like 3 minutes
Because it surged and the wells all came on. Yeah, that's crazy.
So I had the pleasure of calling Dr. Markle early in the morning. I said, "Hey Bill, we got a problem."
By the way,
You might be hearing.
Camille is not going to. Yeah, she sent an email about her preferences for moving the dates. Good. Yeah, no, going good. Lots of stuff, but the meters we're gearing up for the meter replacements. So those are starting on the city side, and then we're going to get into the residential here next month or two. So that's a big project. That'll touch everyone.
Is this just upgrading like automated meters?
It's replacing the meter itself and going to the automated reading. Yep. So you'll be able to get in and get text alerts if say your use goes massively high. It'll give you a text alert.
Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We calling to order the meeting of the Woodland directors of the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency. We have roll call. Let us show that the 4 representatives for the cities are here. The university and the county representative is not here at this time. Is there approval of the agenda? Any other additions or things to the agenda? Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any public comment at this time? I don't have any cards. No public comment. So we'll open and close it at the same time. And then agency business, we will adjourn to the conference room at this time for closed session. And then we will report out when we come back. Thank you.
You notice he was in a closed session, though.
Let's call the meeting to order and welcome Mr. Saylor, who has joined us at this time. There is no reportable action coming from closed session, so we move on to consent calendar item number 2.
I'd actually like to pull consent item 2C just for a brief couple of comments. But I'm happy to move items 2A and B.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the consent items 2A and 2B. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No opposition. Treasury report, Mr. Lee.
Yeah, so in the future, I don't know whether this is possible, Paul. Right now, the way the costs are split, so for instance, sort of in the comments, there was sort of talk about the Davis contribution, the City of Woodland contribution, and those are split out. But in terms of how the costs are split out, they're aggregated. And I know that for some items, there's a very set formula in terms of proportional to water usage, proportional to the cost-sharing agreement. If I recall correctly, there's essentially 2 basic sort of ways we split the costs. So the idea would be perhaps in the future, there might be 2 additional columns. Okay, maybe 4 additional columns when you look at budget versus actuals. But the idea would be we could kind of look and we could see kind of what Davis's portion is, and Woodland can look and see what Woodland's portion is in terms of the budgeted versus the actual. It's not a big deal, so it's not sort of request like, please do X. It's just perhaps that might be something we look into, and perhaps it's done just on a yearly basis or once a year at the kind of the final year type of thing. But that was really it. It was, as I was looking, the comments talked about the different contribution that Davis was making versus Woodland in terms of actual versus what was originally budgeted. And it's like, oh, okay, well, obviously the costs must have come down. And I didn't know whether the costs came down sort of identical in terms of proportions for the Davis piece and the Woodland piece. And just kind of looking, you're not really able to tell that. So that was it, really. I don't know if my colleagues have any additional comments on that.
Paul, do you see that as something that's doable?
But work hard with Lindsay, I think we can. I know the budget, when it's built up, has a Woodland share, a Davis share, because that's how we come up with the different total contributions for the year and the quarterly. Our debt schedules are different. That drives it. We'll just have to check on how tracking the actuals. So I think we can absolutely do it, whether it makes sense to do it on a quarterly basis, semi-annual. But I think we can do that. So we'll acknowledge that.
Even on yearly would be sufficient. So in terms of matching up the actuals to what we thought.
Yeah, some of them will still be formulaic in terms of how the splits were, because we don't have invoices for Davis, invoices for Woodland.
So let me be clear. I don't really. There doesn't need to be a specific. How do I express this? So let's just suppose the cost of chemicals was budgeted at $300,000 for the year, and it was a 55-45 split.
Sure.
And it turned out that it was $275,000 for the chemicals. Just applying that same sort of statutory split, that would be sufficient. And it may be just described as sort of advisory or addendum or additional information, so that in terms of the numbers, if somebody were super duper picky, we would have kind of the out that this is just helping us get a sense of, as opposed to a true split.
Yeah, so we'll work to do that. I will, a question that Chairperson Davis had asked me before, and I want to be clear on this. In the past, and I apologize, it's not in this report, in the past we've also included sort of the balance sheet, which shows our beginning fund balance, revenues, expenditures, ending fund balance. And in the past, I think we've also tried to indicate at the end of the day, the fund balance that remains with the agency, how much of it is net, for Davis and Woodland. So we would need to do that same exercise to get back to reporting a fund balance, and how much of it is as a result of the contributions net of expenditures by each agency. So it's consistent with a reporting piece that we do need to do anyway.
Sure, and I'll just kind of beat this one to death here. Where this could be useful is where we have different sort of water usages as compared to plan, right? So I know that Woodland has conserved a fair amount of water, just like Davis, and so the budget's built on an expected level of use, and if our usages vary by different percentages, that could be helpful. Again, from an auditing standpoint, it doesn't have to be exact, but it would just be nice if we're able to go back to our community and go, well, we had budgeted, $6.8 million in operating expense, and because of our lower usage and blah, blah, was actually, $4.2 million or something like that.
I might suggest something if I can. If we use the mid-year budget update that was provided today and we just add columns for Davis, Woodland, and UC Davis, then we can track actual, we have the information, we're showing it in a consolidated form here, so we can show them by those line items for each of the different agencies. And then at the end of the year, we do a reconciliation anyways, so we can come back to you and then give you a report on what happened for the entire year as well.
That'd be great,
work?
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comment on item C?
Being new, it looks to me like the revenues, actuals for is that second quarter only that 4 million?
No, it's through the second quarter, so it would be the 6 months.
Well, halfway through the year, it looks like we're very, very low. Is this the way our funding comes?
No, actually, there's two issues there. One is, and we noted in the staff report that the second quarter payment actually from the city of Woodland isn't reflected in here, in part because we had overpaid on the debt service, so we were spending down fund balance to cover that. So normally, to answer part of your question, we have quarterly invoices that are sent to each of the two cities based on the cash flow requirements for each quarter. So we basically charge in advance for the next 3 months worth of work. And because of both the reimbursements from the SRF loan that were used to offset city expenditures and overpayment of debt, we used those funds to replace contributions through the first 6 months.
Thank you. Being new here, I'm still catching on this.
Any further comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
Happy to move the item.
Pardon me?
I'm happy to move approval of item 2C.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt item 2C under the consent agenda.
Chairperson David, can I make one other
Sure.
comment? And so this is, technically through December 30th. The other item that's noted in here is our budget includes the expectation of a reimbursement from Reclamation District 2035. It's my understanding that while it wasn't posted as of December 30th, an initial partial payment, I believe in the neighborhood of 2.2 or 2.3 million from RD35 has been received, and it'll be reflected in your next report. But I just wanted to, for the record, acknowledge the receipt of that payment from our Reclamation District partners. Thank you.
Everybody's still good? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt this item C on a consent calendar. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 3, Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency operations update. Yep.
Hi, good afternoon. There's really two updates. The first one, the general manager update, is really kind of a combination of items 3 and 4. And then we also have an operations only update, which Stan will be providing after mine. So there's really 5 topics I wanted to cover today on the agency's management of the project. A couple of things really, update on where we are with our grant and loan financing. 2 items related to the joint intake, the completion project, and also where we are in the interim until we get that project underway. A little fish refugia study we're doing right now, and then a kind of a real brief outlook on where we're thinking we may be next year on water supply, or 2018 water supply. The first update is really on grant funding. We have received the $40.2 million from both the federal and state. This is the funding for the joint intake facility. We are awaiting reimbursement from the Department of Water Resources. This is the Proposition 1 funding. We recently got $2.5 million. We got that last week, Friday, I believe. We are still awaiting the remaining $2.5 to $3 million of funding, which we expect to get in this fiscal year. Next topic is where we are with respect to our loans. Both cities have initiated closeout procedures for the SRF loans for both Woodland and Davis. We did do the final site visit with the State Water Resources Control Board in December. They come out to make sure that we actually built the project that they paid for and make sure that we had all of our paperwork in order. So that all went very well. They signed off on really everything. The only thing that is outstanding at this point is completion of the final report. So we are working on that now. We'll get that to them shortly. One thing I want to put out on the bottom of this slide is something that I don't think we can talk about quite enough, is that both of the city's loans came in roughly $8 million under budget. So the Woodlands SRF loan was $111.4 million. We finished the loan at $103.3. The Davis loan was $95.5 million, and we finished it at $87.7 million. This isn't all inclusive of the project. There are certain costs that are not reimbursable by the agreement, like certain attorney fees, a couple other miscellaneous things. And then we were also financing the completion project with cash rather than through the loan program. So this is not a final complete project budget. However, we are under budget with everything included. So I think that's really good news. Where we are with the joint intake completion project, kind of a brief reminder of that work. The scope of work generally includes removing of the existing pipeline. This is the pipeline that went from the old intake to Conaway's Canal. This pipeline goes generally through the bottom of the levee. So what we need to do is on the land side, on the Conaway Canal side of that pipeline, we need to grout that full of grout and then physically remove the water side of it. And then that also includes final road grading and paving. There's also a small, we call it the seal water pipeline. Basically, there's a well there that provides seal water to the pumps. That pipeline right now is kind of running on the ground. We need to bury that so it's permanently installed. Execution of this contract has a couple of pretty significant schedule constraints, as I think you may remember from previous meetings. On the riverside work, we are only allowed to work in the river between April 15 or when the water level drops below the bottom of the conduit, which could happen whenever. And then we have to complete our work before October 31st, because that's the definition of flood season is between November 1 and April 15. On the Conaway Canal side, the land side of the project, irrigation season is between April 15 and September or October. So we have kind of a really tough construction window that we're working with. So what we included in the contract, we included a work window between February 1 and April 15 to do the work on the land side on the Conaway Canal side, which is outside of Conaway's irrigation season. So their canal is pretty much empty at this point. We cannot work on the river side of the levee. We cannot destabilize the levee in any way. However, we can do the grouting work in the conduit. If that can be achieved prior to April 15, prior to Conaway irrigating for the season, that gives us a lot more flexibility on the water side of the work. We did include in the contract an incentive for the contractor to do this work. There's a $50,000 bonus in it for them if they can get this work done before April 15th. But it is very weather dependent. They can't work when it's raining. They can't work when it's too muddy. So we will try to make that happen. Overall project, we're anticipating construction and completion in fall of 2018 at some point, and that depends a lot on if we can get this first piece done before April. This is something, there's been a lot of coordination with RD 2035 on this and the Levee Maintenance Agency to make this all work out. Quick update on where we are with the construction bids. We did open bids on December 19th. We received 3 bids. The range was between 1.8 and 1.76 and about $2.4 million. Lister Construction is a low bidder at $1.276 million. After the opening of bids until now, we had done kind of some extensive research into making sure that they met the qualifications of the contract. There were minor bid variances on the 2 low bidders that we have the ability to waive those, so we did that. And we did actually award the contract to Lister Construction yesterday. As you may recall, at the previous board meeting, we had authorization for the general manager to approve the contract up to $1.3 million. So they came in just under that. So we're working right now on getting the contract documents underway, get the pre-construction meeting set up as soon as we can, and get them underway as expeditiously as possible. Couple of things that we're working on now. The joint intake facility, there was some erosion control matting installed on the water side of the levee, I think a bit on the land side as well. And this is basically to help hold the banks of the levee in place until we do the project. Agency directly paid for the material, and RD 2035 installed it. And this is part of our agreement with RD 2035 that basically the maintenance of this until project is done is a 50-50 split between the agency and RD 2035. RD 2035 is grading the road weekly. They did haul in some gravel in December because the Corps Levee repair project was hauling in several trucks of large rock daily. We feel they wrecked the road, but it's our responsibility to maintain it. So several truckloads, I think it was about 6 truckloads of rock came in, and they rebuilt the road. As far as I know, we have not had any complaints on the road itself. So that seems to be going pretty well through winter so far. Another thing we're working on right now is the agency is financing a fish refugia study. There are a couple of locations where this refugia exists, and I guess, correct me if I get this wrong. So there's location 1 and location 3 are basically a refugia that's located within the piling, the sheet piling that's adjacent to the structure. And there's also some smaller fish refugia on the screen itself, on the face of the screen itself. And basically what this is you could call it a safe space for fish. It's a space where little tiny fish can go and hide while the predator fish kind of go by, and it provides them a place to not get eaten, I guess. And so this is part of the mitigation for the project, part of the requirement for state and federal funding. That also included that we do a study to see how effective is this. Do the fish use it? Do the predator fish learn about that and then eat the little fish when they leave anyways? And what the state and federal government uses for, they use this to help inform the next fish screen project down the line. Do they require this of the next project or something else? So tonight and tomorrow, actually, they're going out to do the fish research. The fish have started to run in the river now, so they're going out tonight and tomorrow night to see if it actually is used. I have a couple of quick pictures of that. This is one of the areas. This is location 1, location 3. That has like the refugia built into the sheet pile itself. So the left picture is kind of more like the long view of the whole thing, and then the right is more of a close-up. So you can kind of see there's grading, and there's a gap behind there where the fish can go and hide. They use a program called ARIS, which is kind of like a 3-dimensional sonar type thing. So this is a picture from the first. We did a test a few months ago. This is a picture from that kind of shows the sheet pile. You can see the sheet pile wall behind it, the grading in front of it, and they're able to see if there's fish in what they call the visible recess, which is basically the place where they can live. So it's basically decided to see if it's used and how effective it is. One quick thing on water is really just an update on water for 2018. You probably have all seen the snowpack isn't quite abundant this year. We get together in March, and prior to the next board meeting, we will have kind of planned out our water use plan for 2018. Part of that is including an evaluation of whether or not we view Term 91 curtailment coming, which basically takes us off our primary water rate and onto our surface water rate. One thing we're planning on doing probably in later part of March, is informing RD 2035. It's really a courtesy notification that the agency is planning on using our 10,000 acre-feet of Central Valley project water right. So our senior water right, the way it looks now, we probably will have that curtailment in place, so we will want to notify them of that. So at this point, I'll take any questions you may have on this report.
Any questions, gentlemen? Yes, Mr. Stater.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to.
All right. Well, I just wanted to mention that the city of Davis has had some experience with trying to direct wildlife into confined areas. The Toad Tunnel under Pole Line Road was designed for a similar purpose. And one of I think you might want to consult, because there are some artists who can develop signage so that the fish, as they come by, there could be a sign that says refugia with an arrow that points them in the direction. And I'm sure, I think Will would be Will, would you like to be a subcommittee to help me with that?
Right. Books have been written on that subject.
With that comment, I think we can move on. Is there any? So, Tim, do you have any further report?
Stan has an operational update.
Okay.
I'm trying to see how I get to that. Okay.
Is it on there? Yeah, Tim, you may have to run it
Yes.
through.
I'll be Vanna White.
All right. So just want to give you a brief update on the O&M of the facility. So a snapshot on operations, roughly, for December, we had roughly, average day of 13.8 million gallons delivered. You can see the chop up there. Woodland was roughly 7.8, Davis almost 5, and UCD took about 1.1 million. And that was in December. The plant met all its contractual obligations and regulatory requirements. No issues on that front. We had no shutdowns, no unexpected shutdowns, nor utility outages. All reports to DDW and the agency were submitted as required. That includes the annual operations report, which is, for the most part, a compilation of the monthly reports with a lot more data behind it. And then, oh, there we go. Yeah, go ahead.
Tim, can I just ask you to clarify on those usage numbers, just so we don't give the impression that Woodland is using that much more water? Some of that is our ASR. Thank you. Sorry.
Yes, we'll clarify the usage number there. It looks like Woodland uses a lot more water. That's actually not the case. So we'll get that on the next slide. Or on one of the slides that's in there. So from a maintenance perspective, the CH has been providing and performing annual maintenance. So that's in effect taking down a number of the processes to inspect and make sure that all components are operating properly. That includes the EQ basins, sedimentation basins, gravity thickeners. One area we did, the hydrocyclone, we did see, CH did find that there was some concrete erosion present there, so they're currently developing a fix for that, and we'll be installing that here in the next month or so. And just so as an example, you have an EQ basin there that's been taken down and a gravity thickener as well. You can see the CH2 gets in there, cleans them out. We'll remove any debris. Also check the underworkings to make sure they're all properly functioning. They also, a couple other things they did over this past quarter. They did install permanent sodium hydroxide feed system, which is to aid in the removal of manganese in the plant. And that was done after we had seen some evidence of some manganese coming in from the raw water. They also installed the aged polymer system to assist with settability of solids. Again, during your first year of startup, these two things were added because not everything can be planned prior to getting the system up and running. So these were improvements they've designed and implemented. They also installed the polyphosphate feed system for Woodland. As you know, with some of the water quality issues that were noticed early on in the startup, one of the solutions was addition of a different type of polyphosphate. So that system has been installed. However, Woodland's not planning to use it at this time. And then we also, from a standpoint of the chlorine residual going to each city was contractually limited to 1 part per million. We actually, both cities and UCD, would like to lower that. In order to allow that and make sure it's efficiently operated at the plant, we had to order, CH had to order some new pump heads for the chemical injection system to allow us to get down below 1 part per million. A couple things. So one thing, and I thought it was on there. Hang on a sec. Yep, it's the last page. So I didn't want to forget Paul's comment about the ASR well. So one item that has come up that I think some of the board is aware of. So we had some complaints. We had some loud screeching noises occurring out at the joint intake. That was due to the fish screen cleaning device. So we've been investigating that. Mainly it's there's some unsealed bearings, 16 of them to be exact, that were basically, after being out in the elements, were deteriorated to where it was metal on metal and screeching as it went along the fish screens. So we've worked with CH. They've ordered new bearings, and actually yesterday they were beginning to replace those. So a couple of problems with that is very challenging to, we're finding it with the design of that facility of the joint intake, it's very challenging to maintain and check those areas. And I have a picture, so it's essentially you're out over the water on the outside of the structure trying to get to the fish cleaning arm. And there's really, from a perspective of an O&M, there really wasn't a good way to do that. There's one ladder there that's sort of rusted out after a year. So what we're doing as the agency working with CH is we're going to be looking at a long-term solution on fixing it so that CH can actually maintain that system. And that will be coming back to the board because there will be some costs associated with that. It's very early in our look at that, but we will be coming back to assess that.
Yes, go ahead.
On that, so the concept of design, build, operate builds in this idea that the entity that designs it is designing it for long-term operations, for effectiveness and lower cost of operations, and I assume actual operability, and because they know they're going to be the operators and on the hook for this kind of stuff. So my question is, why would there be, I just don't know how that would work in this. Would this mean that this is somehow we had a responsibility for this particular element that shifts that liability to the ratepayers, or?
Right, and that's an excellent question, and Tim and Lindsay can if I go off a little bit on that, they can help. But the plant itself, absolutely, that was DBO. CH designed it, so any of these changes, like the first two I talked about with the aged polymer system, they paid for that because it's a design improvement they needed to make. The joint intake's a little different, and CH was not party to that, so it's a little more gray in that front. So we have a need to get it to where they can maintain, CH can maintain it per the contract that they signed with us. How that shakes out on the backside is who's paying. That's a different discussion that we'll get to. But we have a need to get it done, so we need to move forward and get it done. Do you have anything?
Yeah, maybe a little bit more. So the intake facility was a traditional design bid build, and it was actually managed by RD 2035 and not the agency. However, the agency does have operation responsibilities for this facility, so it does fall to the agency to fix the problem and work with it. But we do have 2 diversion agreements with RD 2035, which basically govern this type of thing, and we will be informing the RD 2035 about this issue very shortly and working on a resolution with them for it.
There you
Does that answer your questions? Are you good? Okay.
Good.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Then that's essentially the kind of snapshot for the plant and the joint intake. A little bit about the distribution systems. Woodland, in general, all 3 of the partners have not experienced significant water quality complaints or issues in the past 3 to actually closer to 6 months for in Woodland's case. So everything's going well. In Woodland's case, like I said, the polymer system to add in the phosphate system to add in an additional phosphate for Woodland, it's installed, it's ready to go, but it will not be used at this time because Woodland's kind of in a wait and see mode because water quality seems to be improving and the complaints have been to more of a background noise. And then the point that Paul wanted to make on the water use for Woodland, they began using their aquifer storage and recovery wells back on December 4th. So that's roughly up to 3 million gallons a day of the water supply is actually being put into the ground here in Woodland to be used, somewhat to be used this summer. Take a couple years before that's going to really be fully purposed, right? And then the Woodland's been supplied with 100% service water basically for all of last calendar year. So they're doing well. Davis, we haven't had any additional water quality concerns. We're getting 2 to 3 a month on average, which is essentially background noise. You're gonna see that with any system. We were over calendar year 16. We were roughly 87% surface water, which is a little higher than we projected. Even we thought we'd be more in the 80%, 75 to 80% surface water. So. And then UCD have not seen many, not seen many complaints, and they're roughly 95% surface water since about September when I was chatting with them. So, yeah.
When you say 95, may I ask a question?
Go ahead, any questions?
When you say 95% surface water, that isn't the entire campus, is it?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with their entire structure, but my understanding is, yeah, it's 95% surface water, and then they'd have 5% groundwater supply that would make up their complete need.
Well, they also have water out of Lake Berryessa. That's why I wondered how you could come up with 95%.
That was the number provided from UCD.
So we don't know if that includes the Lake Berryessa.
Right.
That's surface water also.
Oh, that is true. You should be a lawyer.
Yeah.
I just know how they like to define things.
Yeah.
Do you want further clarification of that, Tom?
Oh, it just would be interesting. I mean, I am curious what percentage of UC Davis water is fulfilled by that 1.8 million. It's
Right.
not this my direct
time.
business. I just think it's a matter of interest.
Yeah. For next time, I will make sure we
Thank you.
specify that out.
Any further questions or comments on items 3 or 4? So move on to item number 5, consider approval of resolution authorizing the credit card services under CalCard program and adopt related policy.
I'll do a very brief introduction and then turn it over to our attorney to explain it more in detail for us. Basically, this request is for a CalCard, which is essentially a credit card to allow for certain agency purchases. There are certain things that the agency needs to purchase every year, such as a Microsoft license, conferences, office supplies, and a few other things. Particularly with the Microsoft license and conferences, a lot of these places have gone to online-only, credit card-only reservation system. And what we had been doing in the past is signing up for it, requesting a check, and then paying with a check, but that's been becoming more harder every year. There's not a lot remaining that you actually can do that anymore. So this is a request for the board to consider for basically a CalCard following the City of Davis and primarily City of Davis model and also Woodlands for use of a card for certain purchases.
Any questions?
And just to add on this staff recommendation, per the request of the general manager, we prepared a resolution for consideration by the board. It's in your packet. It does a couple things. One, it approves the CalCard contract authorization, which is a program through the state of California. And then secondly, it adopts a brief purchasing card policy that dictates the standards by which the 3 agency staff persons who would be authorized to have the card would have to comply with those policies and those limits. And the policy also includes transaction limits, both a per transaction limit as well as a monthly transaction limit of $1,000 and $5,000 respectively. Any questions on the resolution?
No, I'm supportive of the concept. I'm just going to give my typical pitch for why can't we do this and with a local financial institution? Is it maybe it's because I don't know how this CalCard program works and functions, but I always got a pitch for the local guys.
And I'm not an expert in this either, but it's many local government agencies use this program, and it's my understanding there's no fee charged to the agency for participating in the program.
Sure. Okay.
Move approval of the action if you're comfortable, Will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not going to hold it up because of that.
We have a motion. Dick,
Yes, I second.
do we have? Just need one motion, or we need to handle it in 2? Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Stoller, a second by Will. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mid-year budget update.
One more short presentation. So this is a mid-year budget update. This is basically a snapshot in time. It includes actual expenses, and this was included in your packet, the more detailed look at what we spent and where we think we've spent and where we're going. It includes actuals through the end of November 2017, December of 2017, and then also an outlook ahead through the remainder of the fiscal year. So as you may recall, the fiscal 17-18 budget had an approved budget of $15.54 million. Of that, the capital project had a negative amount, and this is due to reimbursements from our funding agencies. The operating budget is like $19.6 million, and then, yeah, Bill talks about what I just said. So there's a couple things in the capital budget that are a bit different than what we had anticipated at this point in time. One of the areas that we have underspent at this point in time is related to the joint intake construction project, the completion project, because when the budget was laid out last year, we had anticipated starting construction in September of 17. Well, that has not happened, so we're still carrying that roughly $514,000 that we thought we would have spent by now. But we have executed the contract, and that will start shortly. There's a couple things on the capital budget. This is the capital side of things for that have increased. About $554,000 related to Prop 1 reimbursements. The Prop 1 reimbursement agreement and also the agreement with RD 2035 state that the agency is responsible for costs that are outside of what's reimbursable by the grants. So both the federal grant, the state grant, and also Prop 1. Any costs outside of that are the agency's responsibility. So we're still working on finalizing the numbers. So this 554 will change a bit. We're working with RD 2035 on finalizing what exactly is this dollar amount, what exactly are we getting from Prop 1, and hopefully have that resolved by the end of the fiscal year. So right now we're showing a $554,000 overage on that budget item. But overall in the capital budget, we're okay. All the other items we're tracking either slightly ahead or slightly below what we had planned so far this year. But overall, we have adequate funding on the capital side to take our obligations. On the operating budget, it's a similar story in the capital budget in that some of the items are slightly above or slightly below where we were, but there's a lot more categories and items underneath the operating budget. There's several items that are shown as decreases where we've really underspent where we thought we would be at this time. And this is, again, projecting ahead to the end of the year. Couple items I wanted to highlight is this $416,000 for a fixed portion of the DBO contract, and this is largely due to inflation adjustments. We made an assumption back in budget time last year on what do we think inflation is going to be, what do we think water demands are going to be, and that kind of sets the plan going forward. So we're under on that one. The next two, primarily electricity usage and also pass-through chemical costs. These are items that the agency directly pays. We pay for electricity usage and also our chemicals. This is chlorine, polyphosphates, and sodium bisulfite for pH control. We're under on those, and that's partly due to a couple things. One, this is really our first full year of operation of the plant. So what we were kind of operating when we put the budget together last year, some of it was a few months of actual, but it was also theoretical of what do we think we're going to use for electricity and also chemicals. We're finding that the plant actually operates more efficiently than we thought. The other part of it is that both cities were coming off of a 5-year drought where we had mandatory water use restrictions. Water consumption dropped dramatically in both cities. We're trying to forecast, well, now that we're out of the drought, how much of that water demand comes back. So we were probably a bit conservative in our forecasting for water use this past year. Woodland didn't see a huge increase in water demand over 16, and Davis didn't either. So some of this is maybe conservatism that we had. And we always want to be somewhat conservative. We don't want to overspend. But I think we were anticipating a higher demand rebound than what we actually saw. On the pass-through chemical side, of that, $167,000 is money that was set aside for the polyphosphate chemical for Woodland. This was put in at budget time. At that time, the city was seeing roughly 40 complaints per month of discolored water, and it was a pretty big issue that we were working with. The next phase of correction is basically to add this polyphosphate chemical. So we did start that on that path. We did budget for the chemical. We did install the equipment for it. We got roughly partway through the permitting process for it, and then the situation did improve, or now we're at the point that we think we may not have to actually do it. We did not buy the chemical. So this is still in our budget. It's still showing as unspent money. If we get through the rest of the fiscal year and we feel that we do not need to do it, at that time we will make the adjustment of the following year's budget, and that money will be refunded back to Woodland. And the budget going forward would not include polyphosphate. But I'm not at the point yet that Woodland feels that we can declare success on this matter. The next item down is $148,000 underspending for distribution system coordination. This is again Woodland's water quality issues we were having the first year or so of startup. The agency had budgeted on the Woodland side of the ledger to hire several water consultants for both distribution systems, water chemistry, to help figure out and resolve the problems that we were having. So we worked very closely with this group for quite a while and implemented really all of the recommendations so far, and it seems to have worked. Our water quality complaints went from 40 complaints down to about 15 about 8 months ago. In the last 5 months, we've been around 4 to 6 per month. So that's within what's expected for a city the size of Woodland. So because of that, we've kind of we're no longer engaging the expert group, and we are also not doing polyphosphate at this time. So those are both in the budget, but we're not anticipating spending those. The last item is $1.8 million in SRF debt payment, which is not required until fiscal year 19. The reason for that is really related to the joint intake completion project. The joint intake was tracking a little bit behind schedule, and it was largely due to the water levels in the river and other factors. Woodland's SRF loan had an expiration date. Davis's loan was set up a little bit later, so they had more time. We did a time extension on Woodland's loan to get it through the end of 2017. As a result of that, that sets our payment schedule back by about 6 months. But what happened in the meantime, we did not receive the new payment schedule from the state in time to inform the fiscal agent to not collect the money from Woodland, so that money was in effect prepaid. So the request before you today is basically to reduce the operating budget by $1.8 million. And, sorry, that's coming up in a little bit. But basically, we're looking to take that out of the budget because it's money that had already been prepaid to SRF. One thing that is increased, the only thing that's really increased of note on the operating budget is the property taxes. It's tracking about $191,000 higher than what was anticipated. So in conclusion, basically the approved operating budget is more than sufficient to carry us through the rest of the fiscal year, and we would like to reduce the operating budget by $1.8 million because of the Woodland debt payment. So I guess the recommended board action from this is to reduce the operating budget by $1.483 million and reduce Woodland's quarterly payment accordingly.
Questions?
That's a great story.
Questions? We have a requested action. We have a motion.
I move the item.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'm happy to second that motion.
Okay, been moved and
Just don't get
seconded.
to
The
do that
requested
often.
action. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Going on to item 7, consider election of board chair and vice chair for the remainder of 2018 and the discussion about ensuing years. So, item, that's you, Tim.
Actually, I'd like to turn that over to Dick to talk about.
Thank you, Dick.
Ordinarily, election of the chair and vice chair is something the agency directors handle at the end of each fiscal year. At the end of the previous fiscal year, the decision was made on the directors just to maintain the status quo for 6 months and to retain the current chair, Director Davies, and the current vice chair, Director Lee, for another 6 months. It's been 6 months, and staff's just back before you to reconsider whether or not you want to make a change or just leave the status quo in place until June of 2018, and then we can get back on the fiscal year cycle. And this is just pleasure of the board. No staff recommendation.
So I have a question for Skip. How much longer do you have on your term on the Woodland City Council?
I'm done November 18. So I'm done a year from past November. So I will be here through June. Then they'll probably appoint someone else to this November. So I'm here through November. I'll be on your board through November.
I'm okay waiting, continue the status quo until June, but I'm flexible.
I don't see any reason to make a change at this time, and I don't see much excitement about it.
I'm too new to have an opinion on that one, so I'm happy with what you're suggesting.
Yeah, no, I do think it's important that, the chair and vice chair sort of alternate cities, so we'd want to sort of get back on track. And, with sort of special circumstances where Skip joined the board and due to his long years of service, I think it really made sense and continues to make sense.
So what we're going to do is we're going to try to stick with the existing structure until June, have that election in June, and then the chair will rotate over to the Davis constituency, and the vice chair will be somebody that's going to be here longer than through November.
Got it. Now, do we need a motion to confirm that action?
No, I don't think you do, because we'll just maintain the status quo, and we'll take board's direction and put this on the agenda. And you have a meeting in June, so we'll put it on the agenda for that meeting.
I don't recall what the history was of when the board would normally make this change, and then what we did that was different. Because I think we, in the last maybe year and a half, changed what had been the status quo, but I don't recall what either of those things were. So what was originally it was done at the fiscal year in June.
The joint powers agreement actually specifies a term of the chair and vice chair, and the term expires every June 30.
Got it.
And so at June 30, 2016, when the terms were expiring, the board discussed what to do. And frankly, Director Arnold, I don't recall either the facts about why the directors decided to maintain the status quo, but the decision was made to retain the status quo at least through the calendar year.
My recollection is that Skip had recently joined as being the chair, and it seemed kind of like a quick transition where he was the chair for perhaps 2 meetings, and the idea was that, well, why don't we let it continue?
Thank you
I'm
for
sure
that.
Skip probably has the best memory of us up here as to the timing of that.
I'm not talking. Dr. Marble went to Peru, and here I am.
That's
it.
right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine. I think this gets us back on track.
Yes.
And I don't see a compelling reason not to do that. So I'm perfectly happy with the status quo as it is now.
Very cool. Okay, then we'll have that. Then we're going to long-range calendar, item number 8.
It's just a real quick update. So you have the long-range calendar, which was included in the board packet. There's another one in front of you, which is a little bit different. It's been updated to include the 4th meeting in 2018, which is now right now scheduled for September 20th. So the next board meeting is right now scheduled for June 21, 2018, and we are doing a survey to see if there is a different time that works better than 3 p.m. I think the intent is to keep the same day, but we're very open to changing the time.
This time works for me.
It works for me, too. It seems that we came from a meeting and we're going to a meeting afterwards.
Any further comments?
Was there somebody that it didn't work for?
Camille had sent that email where it seemed to indicate that this day and time didn't quite work, but Wednesday at 3 could work. Although she specified the 3rd Wednesday.
Who are we talking about?
I'm not sure.
So Camille sent this email that was
Camille
forwarded
sent
by Linan earlier today, and then also printed out.
She's the UC representative.
So that's my question. Has Camille indicated, because she's not here now, that this is going to continuously be a scheduling conflict for her?
She did not indicate to me that this time frame was impossible. This was the only response I heard from her today. She is out ill today. That's why she isn't here.
Then absent that, I don't see a reason to change.
Yeah, I'm okay with what's been proposed.
Okay, we confirm the schedule then?
Okay.
Any further questions on it? On 9, correspondence?
Yeah, we did receive two correspondences this quarter. One, the agency sent out. The one we received as I think as Dennis Deemer put it, another year, another award. So the agency did receive another award from ASCE for the surface water project. There is a dinner in San Francisco, I think it's March 23rd, that we're all invited to. So it's another good award. It's another recognition of the success we've had with our project. So that is included in your packet. There is also another letter that that the agency sent to the Sites Reservoir group. This is in response to their EIR that they posted. We asked for our water rights attorney, Alan Lilly, did review this EIR for us, and we had a couple concerns. One of the concerns we had was, does the operation of this reservoir in some way change water rights on the river? Does it change water rights curtailment that we are subject to? So he did a very good review, put together a very good summary. One thing we found out is that our agency was included as a demand on the river. However, it was not included in the model for water demand. So one of the comments back to this group was that we wanted the model updated to include the agency's water usage. So it's a really good summary. It's basically our comment. Generally, the agency is supportive of Sites Reservoir, but there are a couple of things we wanted to make sure are included in the final document that would not negatively impact our water rights.
Any questions on the correspondence?
Well, I just think this is a wonderful recognition. This is the outstanding water project of the year. It's quite something to be proud of. So wonderful work, everybody.
And congratulations to ourselves.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it is,
you know,
yeah. It is.
everybody knows you sweat bullets to get something like this done, you know. How many meetings, both our councils, this group, you know, just a lot of trips to Washington. I mean, a lot of stuff's gone into this. So.
Okay, let us move on to Technical Advisory Committee comments. Do we have a Technical Advisory Committee comment? None from Woodland. Okay, we are past that. Now, board member comments. Mr. Stollard, any comments?
I've just come from the League of California Cities Environmental Quality meeting, and the tale of woe, we all went around the room, there was like 70 of us, to talk about their biggest problem, and people are fighting Chrome 6, they're fighting all kinds of things, and I'm thinking how sweet it is. It is $250 million later, but how sweet it is to be beyond those challenges. So that's why I feel very peaceful and very happy and very grateful. Thank you.
I'll just piggyback onto that. I was at the league meeting 2 years ago, and one of the big topics at that time was the extreme challenges municipalities were facing in terms of finding a supply of water. And I felt somewhat relieved to be not among the participants who were kind of telling their tales of woe and the extremely high costs they were likely to face, and would they be able to get the funds to actually procure additional water if it were available to them. So yeah, a similar sort of thing.
Thank you. You've been here.
And I heard a story on NPR about Cape Town, South Africa, and they have what they're calling 0 day, which is when they run out of water. And that's like 3 months from now, April 20-something.
Wow.
So.
You had another comment?
Yeah, I think they've limited people to 60 gallons per day per person.
And of course, there's lines and all kinds of stuff.
And I did neglect to mention that we also considered at the environmental quality meeting Senate Bill 623, Senator Connor from Carmel area. It's a bill to create a fund of $100 million funded by ratepayers throughout the state, and it's really there. I mean, there are scores of supporters and scores of opponents. A lot of agricultural interests on the support side, a lot of water districts on the opposed side. It would create the fund by a 95-cent per month per ratepayer into the fund for those 1 inch and smaller, $4 for those 1 inch and greater. The real big pipes go up. And we had a long discussion about it, and while everybody appreciates the objective, there are 1 million Californians without safe drinking water at this time. It did not seem, there were just too many questions, and the committee voted to oppose it along with Yolo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. I only mention that because obviously we all know how sensitive our ratepayers are, and we know what the cost is to deliver. So if we chose to take action on this or refer it back to our council, so it's up to this group to direct it to be on the next agenda would still be timely. I think it's unlikely to pass this year. It's just so many questions about it, but that was.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions of Tom? Any other items come before our meeting? Do I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So move.
So move. Moves in second. All in favor to adjourn, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all.